Ah, perro. A ver. Pinche pulso, carnal.
Ahí está.
Ah, perro, ese es el más verga. A ver, tú, Reina. Mira, güey.
Hello guys, Ancient Gameplays, I'm Fabio Pisco and welcome to my channel, and today we're gonna have one of the most requested videos by my viewers, which is the best AMD settings for streaming in the AMD Adrenalin Software, in the OBS Studio and in the OBS Streamlabs. So 3 different softwares, very easy steps to understand, but only the juice out of it instead of explaining it step by step, otherwise this video would have like 40 minutes. Anyway, so firstly let's start with the AMD Adrenalin Software. Just click on the right button of your mouse on the desktop and you have the AMD Adrenalin Software. Just open it and the first thing you have is the home menu. Now what you need is go to the record and stream or record, yes, record and stream tab. Then you have several other sub-tabs, the record, live stream, scene editor, media and settings. Well, on the record, we have the usual settings that we usually have: record desktop, push to talk, show indicator, and so on, and the same happens to the live stream, where you actually have the push to talk options, show indicator, record desktop, and you have different scenes because you might want to have different scenes with, for example, one scene has the chat, the other one doesn't. One scene focus, for example, on one monitor and the other scene focus on the other monitor. In case you have dual or triple or quadruple monitors, doesn't really matter. You have the option to have the microphone working or the camera working or not. So enable, disable, okay? Then you have the option to select the account, blah, blah, and chat and so on. Now, what do you want? By the way, you also have the scene editor, but like I told you, I'm not giving you step by step, it's just the juice out of it. So if you want, you have here the camera options, the overlay, you can select the size and so on and so on. And just because of that, I'm gonna leave you with today's sponsor. Today's video sponsor is GVG Mode, bringing you all the software deals you need, like Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2021 with a new Windows 11 design, and even Windows Server 2022. For all of these, you can use my SKG discount code for 25% off, getting a Windows 10 serial key for only $16. Then use the key on your Windows settings and you'll have an activated system. As for the streaming settings, we have the option to record desktop or not. In this case, I use record desktop because I'm currently actually recording the desktop while showing you this. I'm recording with the AMD Adrenalin Software. Then we have recording profiles and so on and so on and so on. This is for the recording options, and for the recording options, I actually advise you to have the video bitrate at around 50 megabits per second. And the audio bitrate at least at 192 kbps per second. As for the video encoding, it depends on the video encoder that you want. You have AV1, AVC, and AGVC. AVC is the H.264 and AGVC is the H.265, and then we have the AV1. By order of quality, it goes more or less AVC, then we have AGVC, and then we have AV1, with AV1 being the best performer here in terms of quality, mostly in lower video bitrate. So if you go to high video bitrates like this 150 or even higher than this, the difference in between AV1 and AGVC will be basically nothing, and even AVC will have very decent quality. Now what you want mostly is this. Is the streaming, the live streaming, and we have the streaming profiles. We have low, medium, high, ultra, and custom, or even adaptive. So if you select low, it goes to 720p 30 fps, and it is at 1.5 mbps. So 1.5 is really low, really low. As soon as we go to medium, we have 720p 60, and the video bitrate goes up as well, because since we have more FPS, we need more bitrate, because a resolution alone doesn't mean everything, because let's say that the resolution is the amount of pixels that the video has, and the video bitrate is the amount of information that the video has inside those pixels. So if you have lots of pixels, but you have really low information to fill them, the image quality will suck. And that's what happens when you select, for example, super high resolution, but the video bitrate is extremely low. The difference is that more efficient codecs like AV1 or AGVC, for example, they work much better with lower numbers of video bitrate. And that's where the codec kicks in. The better the codec, the better it will work with lower video bitrate due to compression and so on. As we go to high or ultra, the settings start getting better, for example 1080p 60 fps, but I do advise you to actually stream at the resolution of your monitor, if the streaming service allows it. For example, YouTube does allow you to stream at, let's say, 1080p, 1440p, or even 4K. I just streamed at 4K some days ago, so it works perfectly. You can do it. So if you have a 1080p monitor, you select 1080p resolution. If you have a 1440p one, you select a 1440p one. And if you have a 4K screen, you select 4K, which is 2160p, okay? You just do that. As for the FPS, I always advise 60 FPS, even more if you are streaming games, because 30 FPS is just not enough data to actually, well, give a better experience or give a decent experience, in my opinion. So just go for the 60 FPS. As for the video bitrate, then we reach one of the most important parts of the streaming quality, which is once again the video bitrate. If you are running, let's say 1080p and you're running a decent video codec, let's say if you're running, let's say AGVC, because YouTube supports AGVC. Sadly, Twitch does not support AGVC. It will only work with AVC, which is considerably worse. But if you're streaming to, let's say, YouTube or Facebook that do support AGVC, at least AGVC, I think that YouTube already supports AV1. But anyway, AGVC, because the RX 5000 and 6000 series already support AGVC, so you're good to go. The 7000 series as well with AV1. The video bitrate for 1080p, I advise you to give at least 10 Mbps. 10 Mbps, and the audio bitrate I always push to the max, because audio is one of the most important things. As for the video bitrate, once again, 10 Mbps seem perfectly fine for 1080p 60. As soon as we go to 1440p, I do advise you to go to at least 20 Mbps, because 1440p 20 Mbps will be more or less okay. If you can push it to 30 Mbps will look even better at 1440p, which is like the mid ground for 1440p streaming, in my opinion, because when you have lower video bitrate, since you don't really have the amount of information needed to fill the pixels, what will happen is that you'll see that those squares when, for example, your character is moving, because once again, there is not enough information to fill the pixels, so you just see the square there. If you go to 4K, well, then I advise you to go to at least 50 Mbps, sorry, in this case the software doesn't allow more than 50 Mbps, but 50 Mbps, I mean even 40 Mbps would be decent. If you're playing fast-paced games, well, 50 Mbps. If you're running, let's say, for example, AGVC or AV1, even 40 Mbps will be more than fine at 4K. Remember, the video bitrate is what actually gives the quality to your streaming. Also, if you're indeed using the AVC, this option will actually appear, which is the enhanced filtering. Improves AVC encoding quality under certain scenarios, may have an impact on gaming performance. Well, the impact on gaming performance will be very low actually, and it will indeed give better performance to the AVC encoding type. I do believe that the AMD software only allows you to stream with the AVC codec, so make sure to enable the enhanced filtering option, because it uses B-frames and it actually improves the video quality overall. The stream quality will be much better due to the B-frames if you are using AVC. If you are just using AGVC and AV1, which is not selected here, by the way, this is only for the recording, so this is only using the AVC codec, but if you are using another streaming service, well, you won't need this. But if you are using AVC with the Adrenalin software, enable the enhanced filtering, because it does improve the stream quality. So now going to OBS, the well-known open broadcast software, I believe. Let me just confirm. OBS might seem confusing for a lot of people, and if you're not really much into streaming, it does, and it can be really confusing. Okay, first of all, let's disable the preview, sorry. Then all you have to do is go to the settings here. Let's start with the settings. You have the stream options, and firstly, you start by selecting the service that you want, because according to the service, it will enable or disable several different types of codecs. For example, if I select Twitch, it says automatically that the streaming service Twitch does not support the encoder AV1, so the encoder will be changed to X264, which is the CPU encoder, something that you usually don't want, at least for normal streaming, unless you're streaming with another computer, okay? But if you're streaming with the same computer, you want the GPU to do it. So let's press yes. So if you're, for example, using Twitch, if you go to the output settings, which are the most important ones, you have the streaming app, the recording app, audio, and replay buffer. So you go to the streaming tab, and you have the video encoder, and as you can see, you have only 264 and AMD hardware H264, which once again is the AVC, which once again is the worst one. So AVC, since it is the worst codec, you need more video bitrate in order to make it work properly, to make it have a decent quality at least. So for the encoder settings, imagine that you are streaming to Twitch, so you only have the H264 because Twitch is stuck in 2004, whatever. Then you have the rate control, which is basically the CBR. CBR, it's not custom bitrate, is something like constant. Yes, it's constant bitrate. Then you have several types: variable bitrate latency, and these ones I don't really know what they are. High quality, constant bitrate, something like that. High quality, variable bitrate, I suppose. So you can select, for example, the HQ CBR, and then you go to, for example, once again, if you're streaming at 1080p, you go for 10,000, 10, 1, 2, 3. If somehow you're going for a higher resolution, or if your system just supports it. So if you're streaming at 1080p, but even then your system has no performance drops or nothing that really bothers you, go to 15,000. And if it still doesn't have any issue, go to 20,000, because higher video bitrate will always bring you better quality, okay? Still, we're going by this resolution, but we'll talk about that later. So we have the video bitrate. We selected the constant bitrate instead of having a variable one depending on the scene. We have a constant video bitrate of 20,000, or in this case 20 Mbps. If you can, I usually stream at, let's say, 30 or 40,000, in this case 40 Mbps. I usually do this and I have no issues with my streaming, even when gaming heavier games, so it's fine for me. But if you have a lower end system, well, try 20 or 30 and you'll be completely fine. Even 10 if you're using a better encoder, like I told you. Then we have the keyframe interval, which is 0, is auto. Basically it selects the keyframe interval. By the way, I'm no expert in streaming, but you can, like I told you, I'm just giving you the juice. You can just select this to 0 because it will be at auto. You don't really need to care about this at all, about the keyframe interval. As for the quality, you have several presets. You have the quality, balanced, and speed. According to the preset that you select, well, it will have higher or lower impact on your CPU and GPU performance. More on the GPU side, of course. The CPU performance won't have such a drop. But you can select quality because the GPU will handle it very well. Even if you're running, for example, an RX 580, it will still do a very decent job. And if you're running an RX 5000 or 6000 series, it will do an even better one with almost no performance drop. As for the profile, once again, you have the high, main, and baseline. Just select the high, and then you have the option to select the B-frames. Remember the enhanced filtering option that was on the Adrenalin software? Well, I told you that those were the B-frames option, and then you have the amount of B-frames here. You don't want to have lots of B-frames because, from my understanding, the B-frames are something like, well, it's kind of a frame that the streaming service or the streaming software creates in order to fill in the gaps of the low video bitrate that you have. So if you have low video bitrate, you don't have enough information for those pixels. So the software kind of guesses the frames according to the previous and the frame to come. And it guesses the frames and fills in with that information in order to give you better quality. So you don't want many of those guessed frames, because those guessed frames might not be entirely correct and might give you motion artifacts and so on. What you want to go for max B frames is like 1 max B frame or maybe 2 at most, and just leave it be. As for the audio, well, you can just leave the sample rate at 48 kHz. That's how we say in Portuguese, by the way, and you don't really have to mess around this. You can select, for example, the low latency audio buffering, but once again, you don't really need it unless you're having kind of a latency in between the video and the audio, but usually it is not needed. As for the resolution, well, OBS automatically picks the resolution of your monitor. My resolution is 1440p ultra wide. That's what happens here. So you can go here and select, for example, 1080p, and it will only select the 1080p, but you want to select the resolution of your monitor. That's what I advise. So if you have 1440p ultra wide, just select 1440p ultra wide. If you have 1440p normal, just select 1440p normal, 4K, and so on. Then you have the FPS numbers. You can go up to 60. You select 60, then you have, for example, the filters for downscaling and so on. In this case, since the resolution matches, the resolution is exactly the same, there's no need for downscale filters, okay? And basically that's it for OBS. You have the options, the streaming options, the outputs, and the video resolution. As for the output, once again, if you're streaming to another service, let's say, for example, YouTube, if you're streaming for YouTube, automatically you have more options for the streaming codec. So if you're streaming to YouTube, if you go to the output, you'll have different options. For example, now you have the SVT AV1 and the OEM AV1. The AV1, these two, alongside with the X264, are CPU sided, so you don't want to use these once again because the AMD, the hardware encoding of the GPUs nowadays is much better. So now that you select YouTube, you now have the hardware H264, hardware H265, and since I have the RX 7000 series because they support AV1, you now have the hardware AV1. So if you're streaming to YouTube, I do advise you to select AGVC, the H265, or the AV1, which are the best codecs. For example, if you are selecting AV1, you once again go here, high quality CBR, and since even at, let's say, 4K, since you are using AV1, you don't need to push, let's say, 50 Mbps. You can select, for example, 30 Mbps, and since you're pushing AV1, it will be more than enough because, once again, the codec is way more efficient, and that's how it works. Once again, as for the preset high, and the main profile keeps being it. As you can see, since you are using AGVC or AV1, you won't have the option to select the B-frames because the B-frames are a thing that they invented to the AVC codec because the codec was not efficient at all, and the video quality was way lower than expected compared to the newer codecs. Basically, that's it for OBS. And now we have Streamlabs OBS. Now Streamlabs OBS is actually different from the original OBS. OBS is actually free, and it does have a lot of options that the Streamlabs desktop doesn't have. Streamlabs though have more options in terms of, let's say, the viewer counts, like I have here the cameras, the frames, and that's why I use it. For example, the last time I used it was at 4K, so that's why it disabled the settings. But as you can see, it has more options in terms of many other things like the camera, the viewer count, and so on, and that's why I use it, although it is way more limited so far than the OBS. Streamlabs desktop is different. And well, going to the settings, we have the general with lots of settings that we have. For example, disable hardware acceleration, which is something that you don't want to do, and disable live streaming features. Once again, you don't want to do this, of course. Then we have the multi-streaming, which allows you to, if you have the Ultra pack, you can actually do multi-streaming. You can select streaming for YouTube, Twitch at the same time, just an example. But as going to the streaming options, I already have the YouTube connected. So YouTube, you can also do many other destinations like Twitch, Facebook, Trovo, and so on. I have the YouTube options enabled. And although I have the YouTube options enabled, well, sadly, this software is kind of limited, like I told you before. It is better than the normal OBS. It is better in some scenarios, but in terms of video codecs, it is much worse. And still, I use it, and my videos and my streaming quality is quite nice because, once again, I use higher video bitrates. So we have the software options and we have the hardware options. Once again, you want to select the GPU and not the CPU, so you select hardware AMD H264. As for the video bitrate, As you can see here, the last one that I did was 30,000, so 30 Mbps. And if you go watch my latest live, you can see that the image quality is more than fine, even at 4K. If you're playing in fast-paced situations, well, you might want to go to 40,000 or 50,000 video bitrate, 50,000. And once again, because we're using the H.264, if we were using AGVC or AV1, 30,000 would be more than enough, even for fast-paced games, okay? Then YouTube recompresses things once again, but it would be enough. As for the audio bitrate, you have the option to go 192 up to 320, and the better the audio bitrate, the best, because it also captures more information for the audio, which is good. And basically this is it. We have the streaming options, video bitrate, hardware, and there's not really much we have. In terms of recording, we can select different codecs. So we can select the H.264, we can select the AGVC, but even there we don't have the support for AV1. So Streamlabs doesn't support AGVC for streaming, not even for YouTube, doesn't support AV1 at all, not for recording, not for streaming, so it is infinitely lower in terms of options, of encoder options, than the OBS, but at the same time, once again, it has more options in terms of entertaining for the streaming, so for the stream, so it is why I use it. As for the audio, once again, you can leave at 44.1 kHz. The desktop audio devices, that's something that you have to select depending on what you want. And then we have the video. Once again, you have the base resolution and the output resolution. So you want to have the same output resolution as your canvas resolution, which is your native resolution. So if your monitor, let's say, has, like mine, 1440p ultra wide, you select 1440p ultra wide. You don't want to rescale it because the image quality will look like shit, even if you're using a good downscale filter, like for example the Lanxess sharpened scaling with 32 samples. Okay, so you want to have the native resolution once again. As for the FPS types, you can select fractional, integer, or common. Let's just go to the common and select 60 FPS. Once again, resolution of your monitor, 60 FPS, and for the output settings, you select a minimum of 30,000 if you're going to YouTube. If you're going to Twitch, I believe that they have a limit on the video bitrate, which is like 7,000 or something, so makes it even worse, because if you have a limit to 7,000, the image quality will be much worse in terms of AVC, and since they do not support AGVC or AV1, it will be worse. But at least you can try to stream at higher video bitrates. Now, if you're streaming at higher video bitrates and you somehow have, for example, FPS losses or something like that, so it will give you an error here saying that you are losing FPS, things aren't working fine, then decrease, for example, the video bitrate a bit, decrease the audio bitrate a bit, or select, for example, the encoder preset, select the encoder to balanced or speed, because that indeed might happen. It usually doesn't, but might happen, so it is important for you, if you are having FPS drops, just go once again here and select lower video bitrate and lower audio bitrate. That will most likely fix it. And by the way, if you want to go to the advanced settings, you can also go to the advanced settings, then select the streaming, and once again you have the AMD hardware, and then you can do the same thing as we did on OBS. You can select the constant bitrate, you can select it, then go, for example, 30,000, the keyframe interval the same, auto, and then you can select the max B-frame. So since we're using AVC and Twitch only uses AVC, you can select, for example, 1 or 2 B-frames in order to improve the quality of your stream, okay? If you're using Twitch or some other streaming service that does not support AGVC or AV1. And well guys, thanks a lot for watching, don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video. Sorry if I actually missed something, because this is my first video, it's the first video that I do, with the streaming settings, and I myself am not the most experienced user in terms of streaming, so there are some things that I might not be able to explain you properly, but if I didn't, just leave a comment in the comment section correcting me, because I'm always looking further to increase my mental ability, let's call it that, increase my knowledge, so I will be, well, it will be good, and I will be very glad to have those comments correcting me. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any doubts, once again, comment section, and well, see you in the next video with maybe talking about the LSS 3.5, I believe, and then the AMD drivers 23.8.1. Cheers.